is to try and make clearer to the world the role that Cambodia played in establishing National Health Service. This is what Reti was talking about, because in Cambodia, people know that King Jayavarman VII in the 12th century built 102 hospitals. And this is wonderful local story, but the world doesn't realize that in fact this was something new. And what we're trying to establish in this program is that the Khmer system of hospitals was the first large organized national health system in the world. That before that there were many kinds of medicine, Ayurveda in India, Chinese medicine, and local medicines in Khmer medicine, for instance. What we do know is that Khmer medicine was known very early. So your local medicines here, which are still, of course, important in society, in the 7th century, an Indian specialist in medicine and in Buddhism went from India to China with a lot of texts to translate about medicine and Ayurveda from India. And he went to the Chinese emperor, and the emperor said, "We hear that in Kampuchea, in the south, there is a country which has many medicines, very powerful. And we would like you to go and study Khmer medicine." So this is the 7th century. This is before Phnom Kulen, before all the history that you tell the tourists about. This is 7th century. And so he came to Cambodia. There is an official account in the Chinese records. And he found many medicines here. He talked to the experts, to the doctors, took back their techniques. He told them what he knew from India, what he knew from China. So exchange of science, technology, and went back to China with herbs and with methods. And after about a number of 5-6 years, a Khmer delegation went to the Chinese capital. This is the first record we have of a Kampuchea delegation going to China. And they said to the emperor, "We would like Punyodaya to come back to Cambodia, because we learnt a lot from him, very nice man. We would like him to come back and stay with us." And Punyodaya told the emperor, "Yes, I would like to go back." So he did. He came back and he spent the rest of his life in Kampuchea. Punyodaya. So that's how famous Khmer medicine was in the 7th century. Now, that's a long time before Jayavarman VII, but Jayavarman VII was the first king that we know of who thought about establishing a national system for everybody and free. This is what Reti was talking about. What was happening in China? We were hoping to bring in an American expert who studies Chinese medicine and world medicine and is really one of the top academic scholars in the subject, Piers Salguero. Unfortunately, he couldn't come because of the problems with the airlines. But what he told us is that in China, in the 8th century, under the Tang Emperor, the Tang dynasty, there was a famous empress, Empress Wu Zetian. It's the only empress in Chinese history. She was very brilliant. She was the wife of an emperor. And when the husband died, she became emperor. She was the first one. And she was brilliant. She did more things than almost any other single emperor in many fields. Very brilliant woman. And she knew that there was Buddhist medicine in all the temples in China. Now, under the Tang, there was something like 4,000 hospitals built in China. And what the empress said was, I want all the Buddhists in every temple to be networked, to be in contact, to be exchanging their expertise, so that we raise the level to the highest throughout the whole empire. This is the first medical network in the world. Jayavarman VII built hospital chains. And in the hospital chains, a lot of people were employed. Reti was talking about the number of jobs, the different jobs. So this one was much more formal and established than the one in China. So it's the Khmer system, which was the first national health service that we would understand, which could, for instance, have dealt with COVID. You have a medical health system here which did very well with COVID, not too much suffering, and that's thanks to a national system. This one could have dealt with it. It would have been the latest medicine of the time, which could have handled a crisis like COVID. So this was an enormous breakthrough. No precedent. This king thought of this himself. There's no model anywhere else. He probably knew what was happening in China because they'd been connected since the 7th century. So they would have heard about Empress Wu and the Buddhist temples talking to each other. But the idea of a system with the buildings outside all the cities, which Riti has just shown you, so many, 102, is a huge step beyond anything else in the world. And what we would like to do in studying this, now that Apsara is looking at the hospital sanctuaries, the shrines, and excavating them, we would like to tell the world about this revolutionary system of medicine in Kampuchea, so that everybody knows that this is where national health started on a formal, big scale. China, something. India, many places had local medicine systems. And Colin Millard will show you what was happening in the mountains in Nepal and in Tibet. How the Buddhists still today collect the medicine, bless it in large ceremonies, and distribute all over the Himalayas. This is the system which must have been in place in Angkor to service 102 hospitals. This is a big job. And I will briefly look through the inscription outside each hospital, and you will see that it is written with a very, very clear mind about exactly what they needed for a system that would work efficiently. It's a very clear-headed project that this king had, quite extraordinary. So this is, I'm just saying, 300 years before the first hospital in Europe, which was in France, Hospice de Beaune. So 300, and that was only one hospital. It was by Catholic nuns, and the local duke asked the nuns to take in the sick. And the French are good at making wine, so every year there was an auction of wine in Burgundy, and the profits, some of the profits from the sales of wine went to support the hospital. So it was financed by the wine industry. But 300 years after Jayavarman VII. This is an image of the Bion Temple next to the central sanctuary, which you all know very well. And there is, so this is the Bion Central Sanctuary. We have to thank Olivier Cunin for the maps. He does all the maps. The words are written by somebody else, but it's always Olivier's map. And there is an inscription beside is a sanctuary with a face tower on top, which is dedicated to Bhaishajaguru and the two bodhisattvas. Sunlight for the day service, moonlight for the night service. So it's 24-hour service from the Bhaishajaguru and the two bodhisattvas. And it's right next to the central sanctuary in the Bion. So that's how important the medical Buddha was to this king. Oh, you don't need that. That's just showing you where Banteay Chma is. We're going to take a visit to Banteay Chma because Banteay Chma is important in the hospital network. This is the Western Gallery in Banteay Chma. Have you all been to Banteay Chma? Yes. Everyone? Yes. No, some people have not been. You have to go. This was the second temple of King Jayavarman VII. Very, very important. Banteay Chma, the small temple which was huge. And the road is now very good. You should be taking your tourists to Banteay Chma. When they get there, it's a wonderful experience, huge site, but now quite safe. You can walk on wooden pathways and so on. Well, here is on the Western Gallery, you have 8 pictures of Avalokiteshvara. Very impressive, unique in the world, very large, more than 2 meters high, like more than a human size. And next to it on the southern end is this scene. And we have the king. The king is always bigger than anyone, with a special necklace, and he seems to be making an offering of something. Now, I used to think, and the relevant detail is over here. You see these sacks? They are here in front of the king. Everyone is paying attention to the sacks. The sacks are therefore important. I used to think this was the annual rice festival, because in the text they talk about the rice festival. You thank the god for the harvest. But that was in Prakan, in Angkor, and on the platform in front of the temple of the rice god. It was not in Banteay Chma. So what was the big? What were they putting in the sacks in Banteay Chma? Well, thanks to Colin, who has been looking at what they put in sacks in Nepal and Tibet, that's the medicine for distribution across a big network. And you had a big network in Kampuchea. You had these 102 hospitals. Just off this picture here, there is this scene. Can you make out the figures? They're not easy to see, are they, on that screen? From the hair at the back and the small beard here, they look like Chinese people, as we see on the walls of the Bion. There are certain places where there are Chinese soldiers, and these people are sitting piles of gold in front of them. So I think these people were involved in the distribution. So probably Chinese merchants who understood the thing, had the capital, were involved in the network of distributing around the hospitals. This is a repeat of the hospital sites in Thailand when they were part of the Khmer Empire. And in the top is the very drawings the Thai archaeologists have made of the plans of all the hospitals. It's the same model for everyone. And this is a drawing of Olivier's account of what a standard hospital would look like. There is the story of Punyodaya, who went to China and came back to Kampuchea. The 3 icons underneath, the Buddha. Who is the Buddha in the triad? Bhaishajaguru, Bodhisattva sunlight, Bodhisattva moonlight. He's in the middle here. The Bodhisattvas hold a cylinder, something in the hand, perhaps for the medicine. They are holding one cylinder. Bhaishajaguru holds a vajra and a bell in front of his chest, like this. So these are in Thailand, and always set in a pedestal with 1, 2, 3 holes. So this is the Khmer by Shajaguru, actually in a museum in northeast Thailand. This is the hospital inscription stone. It's quite long. They're written on all four sides, and it's very detailed. But Reti has given you an idea of what is in there. All four castes, whatever that means, everyone in society can go there free. And 2 doctors in each place, doctors of state, 16 men, 12 women to distribute the medicine, and 2 cooks, storekeepers, paddy, food, 2 sacrifices for making offerings to the Buddha, specialists in this, 2 men to gather remedies, fuel, and food, 14 men to guard the hospital, 2 to pound it says rice, but also pound medicine, pounding medicine. You always find a thing for pounding the medicine before you give it to the patient in the hospitals. In fact, we just found one in the Western Hospital outside Angkor Thom today. Very, very detailed quotas of rice, food, medicine, honey, sesame, ghee, you've heard about that, camphor, sugar, and so on. So very, very close definition. The special and most expensive ingredients came from the king's private dispensary. They used gold, they used mercury, cinnamon was the source of it, and certain animal parts were gathered. So the most precious ones were sent by the king to each hospital every 4 months. So it's a very, very detailed and careful system. The bark of specific trees, 2 priests and an accountant. Here, what is prescribed annually for each of them? 12 sets of 10 cubits of clothing, special clothing for everyone who worked in the hospitals. It's a very, very detailed plan. The king, preoccupied with the needs of his subjects, makes himself a beggar. Far more than this is the petition that he is always addressed to these generous lions who are the kings of Cambodia. This work which I have created, this is what the king says to anyone who goes to a hospital. You should protect it. It is yours. It is for your benefit. He who protects it and shares in the highest degree of the fruit of he who does this pious work. So in other words, I built it. I get a lot of merit for doing it. If you protect it, you share in that merit. So it's an encouragement to everybody to support the hospital system, which of course they would do. Even if they have committed crimes, men who enter here should not be punished. Those who must be punished without mercy are those who kill animals or other beings. The kings of Cambodia, devoted to health, will protect this foundation, which is mine. So he's asking his successors to use these things carefully, keep it alive for the benefit of everybody. Okay, that's just to give you an idea of how much he had thought through this system in detail. How many people, the clothing, the medicines, the distribution, and so on. The difficult bit. This section 30 to 37 is full of names that are not understood. This was translated by a Frenchman, Claude Jacques, very famous, lived many years in Cambodia, and into French. And there are many things in there which we need to study. I would like to get the medical experts to consider this, to see what these names mean, because it's the name of things which were part of the medicine pharmacopoeia of Cambodia, which we don't know about. So that is a thing which I'm going to ask the Putishastra University in Phnom Penh to study carefully, to try and understand in more detail exactly what was used in the ancient medical system. So here, these are some of the hospitals Khmer hospitals in northeast Thailand. You can see on the left, it's outside the city wall. They were built, as in Angkor Thom, just outside. So the city life, the noise, and everything going on, and outside you have a more quiet place where the people who are ill have got a better chance of recovering. So it's always outside the city. Also, in case their disease is dangerous, to separate them a little bit from the city, as we do with COVID. Okay, this, again, a hospital in northeast Thailand. From the ancient Khmer hospital, we find Baishajaguru with Vajra and Ganta on his chest. And discovering more and more all the time. These are the archaeology department in Thailand. The discovery that this was Baishajaguru Khmer was by an American who he saw this bronze in a dealer's shop in New York, and the three are connected together. So we know that this is the medical triad. We're looking for a trio, three together. And the one in the center is wearing a crown and with heavy jewelry. This is Baishajaguru. So we know that is, he doesn't look like this in any other system. Baishajaguru is in China, he's in India, he's in Japan, very important, in Indonesia. But the Khmer one, very important because of the hospital chain, and that he is different from all the others. He sits like this. The hospital on the east of Angkor Thom, next to Bion Temple. This is an old photograph of Baishajaguru with no head, sitting outside the hospital. He has now been moved by Apsara, and he is in the conservation. So he's no longer there. But we know that he was sitting there on this pedestal, and on the pedestal you can see here is, at the corner, is a Vajra. So it's a tantric medicine. It's the tantric medicine which was the most powerful and which was in Kampuchea. This is the situation in Banteay Chma, where we, like Angkor Thom, we have 4 sanctuaries of hospitals. Slightly bigger, this again is Olivier's drawing, slightly more elaborate with more bigger than the ones anywhere else. And we're still working on why exactly you had 4 in Banteay Chma. Because in Banteay Chma there were not many people. The aerial LiDAR survey of that region shows not a lot of people living there. So it's not for a big population. So probably it had some special role in collecting the medicinal herbs from the Dankrek mountains nearby and blessing them and distributing them to the hospital system. That's what we think Banteay Chma was doing in this network. So this, the one in the center, the hands are broken, but you can see it's the same position, holding the Vajra and the bell in front of him. That is now in the National Museum in Phnom Penh. Unfortunately, the label still says, it doesn't say Baishajaguru, it says Vajrapani. Vajrapani is a bodhisattva, very important in this period, but he holds the Vajra in one hand, the Vajrapani. It's not. It's Baishajaguru, and it's the largest one we have found, which again suggests that Banteay Chma was important in the medical network. And on the sides, if you look at the style of the faces and the hair and the bodies, they are very similar. They sit on a similar base. They are from one workshop, in my mind. And I think it's from the Banteay Chma workshop, and they are in the United States somewhere. So it would be very nice if the ministry could make a request or a search for these pieces. This one of them was on the art market several years ago, and the photograph is there. But we should bring them back and have the Banteay Chma triad together in the National Museum, or possibly in. So Banteay Chma has 47 face towers, like the Bion. The Bion 59. So that tells you how important this was in Jayavarman's mandala of state. It was the second temple of his kingdom, and it was the base from which he managed to conquer central Champa and bring it into the empire. He wanted to do that. He as a young man, he was a soldier in Champa working with a Cham king. So he wanted Champa in his empire, and he succeeded. After he died, it went back to Champa because the next king, his successors, were not as passionately connected to Champa as he was. So it went back, and Champa was very successful thereafter. 15th century was its high period. I think I'll leave it at that, because I'm just saying that the Colin Millard's work showing us what happens today in Nepal with the distribution of medicine and the ceremonies that go on to put the power of Vaishajya Guru into the medicine to make it powerful. This must have been happening in Angkor under Jayavarman. And so we could perhaps learn from what we see in Nepal today, and that is what Colin is going to show you now.